Today we're talking about how to make our faith practical and productive in providing the resources for our leadership vision. When we're talking about gaining the resources that we need to fulfill the vision that God has given us, we're really talking about gaining and maintaining a right mental attitude, a right mental picture, of course defined by the Word of God concerning the resources that God has for us. You know, I think sometimes we weary God with our complaining and with our, just our lack of and our hesitation of going ahead because we don't have the resources. In fact, some of us, I believe, even hold an offense against other leaders who we've perceived to be responsible to give the resources to us that we need to fulfill our vision. That's craziness. You know, you look at Saul, that's the way he was. In 1 Samuel 13, it talks about them going into battle against the Philistines. I think this is the second battle that Saul took his army into. And it says on the day of battle, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but only Saul and Jonathan had a sword. In fact, they were taking their axes and their plowshares down to the Philistines, their enemies, to get them to sharpen them so that they could turn around to try and defeat those same Philistines. I mean, this is totally ridiculous. A man like Saul, who is positionally the king of Israel, has all the commonwealth of Israel at his disposal, and he has run the resources that he needed right into the ground. There is nothing left. I mean, it is amazing. A nation that doesn't have any more than 2 swords to its name. Yet David, look at him. He flees to the cave of Adullam. He's got nothing. Men start to gather together to him. 400 becomes 600. Men in this cave who see that in David there's a destiny. Why did they see that? Because David was not a guy who would just sit around and complain and say, oh, when am I going to get the resources to do what God's called me to do? You know what he did? He went out and he raided Philistine camps. They raided the enemy's camp to take away the resources that they needed. And before you know it, he's got 600 men fully equipped with all kinds of armor and every kind of weapon imaginable. He's trained them to shoot with the left hand and with the right hand. In fact, these guys are so stealthful and so crafty that Saul comes into the cave to relieve himself. There's 600 soldiers, fierce warriors in this cave, and Saul doesn't even know they're there. You know, David had a different kind of attitude. You remember when he's running away from Saul the first time? He comes to Ahimelech, the priest at Nob, and he says, is there any weapon here? Is there a sword here? And the priest says, yes, the one that you took from Goliath. There it is. It's in the temple. And David said, give it to me. There's no sword like it. Tell you what, guys, this preaches really good. The victory that David won over Goliath equipped him for his battle today. See, if we don't step up and step out and start taking some victories today, start raiding the enemy's camp today, you're not going to have the resources that you need tomorrow. The vision is growing. The demand on the vision, the demand on resources on your life and my life grows continually. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This year's budget is not enough to run next year's ministry. And so we have to be able to grow that out. How are we going to do it? We got to get up off our behinds. We got to get going. Get over a fence and say, you know what? God's given me something to do today according to the Word of God, that I can reach into the realms of heaven. I can press into the enemy's camp. Take some victories today that'll equip me for the battle that I have to face tomorrow. God has all of the resources of heaven available to those who He sees are faithful and diligent and on the right course. Saul is not going to get the resources. He can take the best things and turn them into nothing. David, on the other hand, can take nothing and turn it into everything he needs to fulfill the vision that God put on his life.
God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. This is God's final word on the state of your resources.
Welcome to my No Wimps Allowed zone. This is the place where tough stuff happens. Today we're going to talk about building a drive shaft for my 55 Dodge four-wheel drive, and this is one of those things that you're told never to try at home. In fact, I've heard so many times, you can't do that. I believe
that certain knowledge and certain understanding can take the place of some of the tools and some of the equipping that we don't have right now. I have learned some things about drive shafts and been able to make drive shafts for my 28 Dodge, and my 42 Chev is another 4x4 that has 2 drive shafts. I've never had so much as a wobble or a bearing fail in any of the drive shafts that I've built. Now, what you need to know about drive shafts, first of all, is that these yokes, this one here, is it standing up, then the one on this end has to stand up as well. Because what happens is, as the drive shaft turns, the velocity changes twice. It speeds up and slows down twice in every revolution. If you have them the same, then it'll speed up and slow down the same on both ends. The shaft in the middle does the speeding up and slowing down, but the machinery on each end stays at a constant velocity. The other thing that you need to know is that the angles on both ends of the drive shaft need to be the same. They need to be parallel. In other words, the transmission output shaft needs to be parallel to the rear differential input shaft so that the speeding up and slowing down, the change of velocity, is the same on both ends. Sometimes, of course, you can't do that. Like on the front drive shaft, for example, this is the front one for the 4-wheel drive, and you can't get those angles the same. So what we put on is a CV joint, a constant velocity universal joint, and that actually has 2 yokes in the same joint, which takes care of the velocity change thing. One practical point of physics is that if you weld something at the end, the chances of eliminating the wobble and any out of alignment, misalignment is a lot better than if you weld it in the middle. Now we're going to take some very careful measurements of the length of this drive shaft, allowing, of course, for approximately 1 inch of extra spline movement when the drive shaft is complete and in place. And so very careful measurement, and then we are going to cut the old drive shaft off, the CV joint off, just by going around here with the grinder. As we pull that out, there is a shoulder there that will hold some alignment for us when we put the new shaft on. And then we have to prepare that, make sure that everything's going to fit. And of course, now this one is a little bit tighter, and there's a ridge inside here that we have to grind out and then make everything nice and smooth. And as we put this together, our chances of eliminating wobble altogether are very good, just because we're taking great care here to use what we do know to make it work as well as we can make it work with the tools that we have. Once I've got this one direction established that it's straight and square, I'll tack it there. Thing looks very straight, looks real good, and we'll just check it out in the vehicle one more time before we do the final weld, because we don't want to make any mistakes. And so now it looks real good. We're going to go ahead and weld this thing. Then after welding it, we will grind off any excess steel. The reason for doing that is because we want to eliminate any possibility of weight difference on one side of the shaft from the other, again, to decrease any possibility of wobble. So we've got a great drive shaft here. Looks like we've done a real good job. I'm going to get an opportunity to paint this up, and it'll match the rest of the vehicle. And you watch, this drive shaft will never let me down. What is there that you could apply yourself to and learn over these coming days that would help you become more productive in producing the resources for the vision that God has given you? You know that we need to really expand our minds and be people that embrace new professions, new ideas, new ways of doing things, so that we can become indeed more productive. Now here's a real practical key that will help you cast more excitement in the vision among your leadership team and those around you. You notice that when you come home, or when you go to work or go to the church or wherever it may be, and something has changed, something new has been added, new carpet, new paint, whatever it may be, it makes it just feel a whole lot better than it used to be. Find something that you can do this week, this month, that will just kind of pick it up a little bit. People will get a hold of that and they'll say, you know what, we're really going somewhere in this vision that God has given us.